Hello and welcome to episode 23 of Skeptic Smash Talk. Today is Wednesday the 2nd of August and I'm your host Jason Jones. And with me is my very special new host and ever-suffering wife, Andrea.
Well, hello.
So obviously with the two of us, it's going to be a slightly different format. But one thing won't change, and that is that this podcast is classified as explicit. So if you are easily offended, it's probably best if you turn off now.
Haven't you got a new segment this month?
I do have a new segment. Do you want to introduce a new segment?
Is it ThunderCunt of the month?
It is going to be called the ThunderCunt of the month. And I don't want to give any spoilers away yet, but it seems like Bill O'Reilly will be the first winner.
Ooh, interesting.
Yes. Okay, so you can still reach us on Twitter and Facebook, and you can find all the contact details and show notes at skepticsmashtalk.com. But if you want to send in any feedback or ask questions, you can still email both of us at jasonsmashtalk@gmail.com. Finally, if you want to help support the show, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star review, and please continue to share the show details on all of your favourite social networks and forums. And with that bit out of the way, let's get the next bit out of the way. In comparison, it's been a fairly quiet weekend as far as the nasty news is concerned. I think we have 5 weeks or 4 weeks straight of every Friday or Saturday, something really crappy happening, starting with Brexit 5 weeks ago.
Didn't we have some shooting in a church this week?
There was...
In France?
In France, there was that was the start of the week, wasn't it?
Yeah,
there was some a bit of nastiness there where it wasn't a shooting. They slit a priest's throat,
that's
which
right, yeah.
not that great. There was some nastiness in America, in Texas today. It looks like 2 separate incidents, 1 person dead and a few in hospital. But I think I'm just jumping the gun a little bit now. It's only recently happened the last few hours, but I think one incident led to the other incident because people have got guns in their hands where they just don't need them as far as I'm concerned. So we'll see what happens there. More to come out on that. So both the Democratic and Republican national conventions are over, and now we'll actually get to see what Trump is actually made up of. Until now, all he's done is really have fights and arguments with his own kind. Now he's actually up against the establishment. There was a couple of highlights for me, more from the Democratic National Convention rather than the Republican Convention. You didn't see any of that, did you?
No, I didn't. No, the only bit I did see is that when Hillary Clinton embarrassingly came around the corner when Barack Obama was talking, and like they greeted each other like old long lost friends, and it was just so corny.
I've actually not seen the Barack Obama speech, and it's one that I really wanted to watch, and I will probably later on tonight. But there was 3 that stood out for me, and there was the let's just call him a preacher. It was Reverend William Barber, and he's been getting about a little bit lately, and he's kind of a Martin Luther King, fire and brimstone. He really gave it to everybody actually, and I think I'll play some clips. I'll get some clips together. But there was also Michelle Obama. Obviously, hers was phenomenal, and it'll be a good one for Donald Trump's wife to steal for 8 years' time. And then I watched the last one that I watched this morning was the father of a American soldier who was a Muslim that was killed in Iraq, and he didn't put himself in front of his troops, but he was. The story goes that he was, they were out on patrol and a vehicle was approaching. He stopped his troops and he went to investigate the vehicle, and obviously the vehicle was a bomb. So by doing what he did, he saved his team, but it cost him his life. So this guy's father gave it to Trump as well. So we'll have a clip from that as well. But we will get on to all that in a moment. Now, we were driving home today and there was a story come on the radio about a couple that was celebrating their 10-year anniversary they're renewing their vows after 10 years of marriage and going to...
Aruba!
And it just fucking blew my mind that we've got 10 years. I mean, 10 years is
fair going. It's
not... Is that when you renew your wedding vows now?
I wouldn't consider so. I would have thought 25 years plus is a kind of, but don't know.
I think what's happened is we're watching
Yeah.
reality TV is turning into reality, and reality TV is picking up on the reality that it's now created and is going to mirror that. It's art mirroring art for the sake of art or something like that.
I don't think it's even art, isn't it? I think they've found something that works. People like watching other people twitching the curtains. They don't need to anymore. They can stay glued to their TV. And
do you know what the first reality TV... I don't understand what reality TV is anymore, but do you know what the first actual reality TV show was?
Was it Kardashians?
No. It was Cops. Remember, what you gonna do when they come?
Oh, right, okay.
So that was years and years ago, and you could probably say, I don't know if it's right because it's competition, but Eurovision goes back a little bit before Cops. But that's
not really reality TV.
No,
that's
a competition, isn't it?
Yeah, that
shows how much the rest of the world hates.
Reality is basically watching people live their lives, isn't it?
So you watch more reality TV
Shamefully
than I do.
so, yeah.
Explain to me what it is, because I don't get it.
Do you know what? I don't know whether it's just car crash TV, escape from reality. It's not something obviously I'm proud of, but I've pretty much watched them all, whether it's Made in Chelsea, the Kardashians, Essex. It's binge TV on a Sunday when you've got a hangover and you're just like, ugh.
But Cops, when Cops first come out, they were basically they had a camera following the police cars.
But is that not more informative, like a documentary, as opposed to... I think reality TV to me is kind of more of a, as I say, watching people live their lives, and they tend to.
But it's not their real life, is it?
No, that's what I was about to say. It tends to be like over the top. I suppose they've got to get the viewers somehow, and they see people living these marvellous lives, drinking champagne every day, and shopping, then it's more interesting.
With Judge Judy, now that's probably the next biggest or more famous type of reality TV, The Court. It's not just Judge Judy anymore. There's a few of the different judge. I don't know.
Rinda.
That's it. But
never watched it.
they're pre-agreed. So before they go into the courtroom, they agree between the two parties. So they've gone into a mediation beforehand, and then they just do this thing for Judge Judy, who gets paid a crap load of money just to yell at people and be a bitch, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I've never watched it before, but I mean, is it like the likes of Jerry Springer in a sense? Do they just kind of sort people's lives out on TV?
I need to talk about Jerry Springer. You just brought up a brilliant thing. So the Young Turks, obviously, I watch religiously. Funny thing for an atheist to say, but I come home from work and I'll watch on YouTube.
It's your news.
It's my news, isn't it? And it's pretty much it's a Young Turks and sometimes a bit of Reuters news and something like that. So Anna Kasparian did an interview at the Democratic National Convention with Jerry Springer. And I thought, well, I've just got to watch this. A little bit because I thought that Jerry Springer would, just from his TV show and my misconceptions and my preconceived ideas about people, I had him picked as a hardcore far-right Republican, but he's not. He is completely the opposite. He's so...
I think he would have to be very left, because he's obviously had an interest to get involved with people from all walks of life and actually want to spend time with them on a show, whether it's just for TV's sake, but he's quite happy to deal with people from all walks of life. So I think I would have took him as a lefty, to be honest. But for
anybody for the English who don't know who Jerry Springer is, if you don't know who Jerry Springer is, I'll be a little bit surprised. But for the English, just think of an American Jeremy Kyle. And when I think of Jeremy Kyle, he's not left wing at all. He's probably centre right. I don't. But then I've got those misconceived ideas again because I don't know. Springer's got a podcast, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's probably now my second favourite podcast when it comes to progressive ideas and humanist ideas and things like that. So it was a brilliant interview, and if you find yourself sort of heading towards the left, have a listen to it. The other thing that I think we were talking about it the other day, with him and Oprah Winfrey. Now, Oprah's not one of my favourite people at all. I think she's actually one of the most dangerous people on the planet because so many people listen to her and she's got no idea, and she brings in horrible people like Dr. Oz and douchebag Chopra and all that sort of stuff. And people
treat her like a goddess, don't they?
They do. And she's an awful... Well, is she an awful... She's probably a lovely person, and she does do a lot for charity. She does a lot for a lot of good, but is that good undone by unleashing idiots? Like, she had Wakefield on her show. She had, she often had Deepak Chopra and Dr. Oz and all that sort of stuff. But that's not my point. When Jerry Springer started on TV, he had a show that was very serious lunchtime talk show like Oprah's, and Oprah did the junk TV show, finding out how many fathers some child had and that sort of stuff. And for some reason, they just completely switched around. So a little bit amazing, a little bit of a fun fact.
Mm.
So there
fun
we
fact.
Go.
Playing fast and loose with this fun fact.
Well, it's fun. It's a fact. But back to my point, if you are a bit of a lefty and you're looking for a new podcast to listen to, have a listen to. Just search for Jerry Springer's podcast and it will pop up. He does it live. I think it's weekly in a bit of a hippie coffee shop. So look, it's fun. It's a good listen. So check that out. So there's a very good example of me going off on one with ADD. We're talking about reality TV. Well, Springer's was kind of reality TV. But another story that I saw, I think it was on the BBC today, there was an escapee lynx from a zoo in the UK. It escaped and was out for about 3 weeks until anybody
that's right, yeah.
found it. But I remember we used to have human zoos, and I don't think you can get any more reality TV than a human zoo. So these things...
Isn't that basically Big Brother?
Yes.
We watch them in a cage.
Yes.
Feed them.
Yeah, but we didn't have TV cameras, so this is going back into sort of the late or mid 1800s. People. So,
oh my God!
So
really?
when the explorers went out, when old Capitan Cook went out, so 1700s actually, he would bring back natives and put them in the zoo.
Oh, were these slaves? Did they have to work?
Well, they had to sit there and look pretty.
Oh, right. So that was their work, was to perform in front of people.
Yeah,
like performing elephants in a circus.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh well, there you go.
So, but they didn't end human zoos in the 17 and 1800s. So according to Wikipedia, an African village intended as a craft and cultural festival was held in Augsburg Zoo in Germany, and that was in mid-2005, and obviously that had a bit of criticism go with it. In August 2005, London Zoo displayed 4 human volunteers wearing fig leaves and bathing suits for 4 days. And in 2007, the Adelaide Zoo run an exhibition which consisted of a group of people who, as part of a study exercise, had been, and they applied to do this, to be housed in the former ape enclosure by day, but they got to return home at night. But that was, that in Adelaide, that was to actually raise money to fund the new ape enclosure, so that kind of makes it okay, I guess.
So, I mean, you're not particularly happy with zoos in the first place, are you, really? It's not...
No. Well, if they're used... It's hard, because if they're used for the right reason, that's research and education and breeding programs, that's fine. But where they're used for just the amusement of people, the performing monkeys and all that sort of stuff, I do have a bit of an issue with that, because that's not what animals are.
Yeah, I must admit, the only zoo I've ever been to is very much a conservation and, breeding programs and education type centres. But I suppose you can't have the best of both worlds. You can't not keep an animal in some kind of protective enclosure to breed. No,
and I remember the first zoo I ever went to, and I was very young, and I know it's changed since then. But that was the Melbourne Zoo, and I would have been 5 or 6 years old. They were still in the old, if you can imagine, the old Victorian, very small cages. So there's big gorillas in a cage about the size of a small child's bedroom.
Yeah, that makes a massive difference. When you look at the safari parks and they've got free to roam, and that kind of space.
But
it's a tricky one.
The upside of zoos is that you get the lifespan and the quality of life for animals is massively increased in a zoo. And where they're doing the research and they're looking at the breeding programs, such as with the Bengal tigers and they're still trying to get pandas just don't like mating in public. I don't blame them. I don't like mating in public either.
They're just holding out for a 5-star hotel and some champagne, aren't they, really?
Yeah, and a bit more bamboo.
Maybe a trip to Aruba might help.
Well, okay. So with that in mind, let's move on to the next bit. Okay, so as most listeners may already know, I have ADHD and Asperger's syndrome, and I normally, when I say normally, every now and then, do a little bit of a talk about how it's affecting me and different things that I've done to help me cope throughout the day. But being that Andrea is here, and it probably affects her more than it affects me, it's probably a good opportunity to hand over to Andy, and she can talk about some of the things that she does to help cope with me and my conditions. And hopefully it will ring true for any other spouses that are living with people on the spectrum. So on that note, I'll hand it over to Andy.
Okay, I think one of the prominent things with somebody with ADD and living with somebody with ADD is probably impulse buying, having a passion and then going out and just doing it, which the other partner might actually struggle with at times because it's not always a priority. I think we had a recent thing with buying a mixer. You wanted a food mixer, didn't you?
Yeah.
You know, and you thought, I want this mixer, I've got to have it now. You actually went in to buy a fan, I think, at the time. So you saw this mixer on sale and you rang me up.
Should we put some context to the story? Like why I needed the mixer, why I had to have the mixer?
Because you wanted to make bread.
Because I wanted to make bread.
Yeah. One of your next passions. Yeah.
Okay.
Along with the other hobbies. Do you remember the wood turning?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember the cycling?
Yeah.
Do you remember the running? And when we do things, it's not always by halves. As you know, they're very passionate. You know, people with ADD tend to be very passionate and have to have everything to be able to do it right.
Yeah.
Anyway, we actually, one thing that does help is that we have good budgets, I would say. I mean, I'm an accountant, so to me, it's very important, and also can be quite stressful when you're living with somebody. You can be quite passionate about spending the money, and I'm quite passionate about controlling the money. So one of the things we do have is many accounts, don't we? Yeah. We have a bill account, we'll have a spend account for holidays, we'll have an account for the house, just in case the boiler breaks.
When it comes to money, though, I don't enjoy money.
No, that's the weirdest thing. I think that, I don't know whether that's the part of the reason why you don't think twice, but you hate money, which is one thing I think's a breath of fresh air. Like, money does cause upset, which I can understand. If you've got none and you're spending it all, it gets frustrating. If you've got too much, that can be probably just as awkward for you because you don't know what to spend it on.
Yeah.
The most. So one of the things that, I mean, it helps when both parties are open to talking about it. I think that's something we've developed over the years.
Yeah, it took some time, didn't it? In the beginning, it was just I had my money, and this is before we were even married. But we're living together, and I had my money, and you had your money. I think was it when we got engaged and we decided we needed to we needed to save for the wedding? Yeah, because obviously we were paying for this. Yeah. And there was a few issues in between as well, but you had helped. I mean, obviously helped me along being an accountant, but being
I think
the type of person that you are.
Yeah, and I think because you're normally quite very self-sufficient and you like to control situations that you're doing. So, for example, like if it's your work, your job, you need to have full control of that. You obviously want, as an adult, to have full control of your money, which you totally get. But sometimes in the excitement of the latest thing, you can just go out and buy it. It's like a girl going out shopping, buying 20 pairs of shoes because she loves shoes. It's not always in the best benefit of the household.
I've got a lot of running shoes.
Yeah, you've got about 20 running shoes. I think I'm married to a centipede, actually. Yeah. But yeah, so that's one thing, is being open about the money, not making it seem like it's a downfall. I mean, I'm an accountant, it's my job. So, and having them budgets, set them budgets. I mean, we went out, you wanted to buy a fan for £50 and that was the budget. We said, this is what you're going to, rather than, go out and buy a fan, and you would have come back with a £400 Dyson probably.
250.
Oh yeah, £250 for a fan. I mean, come on.
And after looking at it, they're not worth. I do like the concept of Dyson products, and I think James Dyson is a genius, but I'm not paying £250 for a fan that's about as strong as a kitten farting.
However, when you went to buy this fan for £50, what did you see on the shelf?
No, well, let's go back a bit. You said to me that, because I couldn't decide what fan to get, so go back a little bit.
Oh, so, yeah.
Go back last year or the year before. Probably last year. If I wanted a fan, I would go and buy a fan. If I had £50 in my pocket, I would want the £60 fan or the £70 fan.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've been trying to do, and you have obviously helped me with, is considering what I'm buying beforehand. So doing a little bit of the research and not buying off impulse and thinking about it a little bit. So I couldn't decide what fan to get. I saw a couple of fans, and they weren't too expensive.
Yeah.
And I think at this stage you had said to me there's a budget of £50.
Yeah, I did.
So I had a look, and there was some £5 fans there, and I honestly considered, just for shits and giggles, buying 10 £5 fans.
Which would have been so funny watching you try to sleep surrounded by 50 fans. Yeah, you'd been sleeping in the bed.
Hardest part would have been trying to return them, because that's a nightmare for one item. So surprisingly got off point there a little bit. But so I sent you a message, I think, on Skype. I still couldn't decide which fan that I wanted.
Yeah.
And sent you two options, and you preferred the bigger one.
It was the industrial one, but it wasn't more expensive. It was
cheaper.
It was, but it probably would have done you'd probably need one of them.
Yeah. So back to you. I interrupted.
So yeah. Anyway, you then actually rang me up and said, "Oh, there's a mixer here. I really, really want this mixer. It's normally £300. It's £150. So again, I kind of just inside thought, yeah, I knew this was happening. He's in a shop on his own, sales signs. Anyway, you make a lot of bread, and he was trying to, oh, I really want this mixer. I said, well, can we afford it? Is in the budget. So, think about the budget, and also maybe think about it overnight. I think that was your suggestion, wasn't it? Go away rather than just buying it, because normally you would have just got it, I think, and come home and I'd be like, right, okay, how have you paid for that? What's it? Are you going to use it? Anyway, so to be fair, you didn't let it drop for a couple of days. You really, really wanted this mixer. I did suggest you writing a 50-word essay.
Did I actually write anything?
You didn't. You did promise me a poem, actually.
A haiku?
Yeah, I thought if you could be bothered and didn't get distracted, you obviously really wanted this.
I think if anybody can write a haiku for a Kenwood Chef mix, they should get the Kenwood Chef mixer.
Yeah, I did, and that's why I was waiting for it, really.
Yeah.
In the end, I did come to the shop with you to get the mixer.
To help me lift it.
Well, it's more to make sure you didn't actually buy something as you walk by to get the mixer, because you did just go for a fan originally. So I suppose the key point is setting the parameters for both of us, but also not necessarily always being a big issue. So you probably trying your hardest to think, and me probably not.
Yeah, it's kind of about setting the budget, making sure that the money's put aside. Yeah. Setting the budget, and then obviously doing the little bit of research, make sure you get the best deal and not get ripped off and all that sort of stuff. And then that does happen. But
that's not really a dealing with ADD thing, though.
No. But it's setting all those parameters and sticking to the parameters.
It is.
And the result?
Well, the result is I'm not stressed out, because I'm not worrying that it's been put on credit card, etc., because we've gone the right saving route. So the money is there. Setting the parameters, you've gone out and got what you need, so you're happy that you've got what you want, and it does save for a lot of arguments of did you really need and why have we got that,
and we get lots of fresh bread. So earlier today I talked about the 3 standout speeches at the DNC last week. Now, you all know I'm a fairly staunch atheist and far from being a Hillary fan. But the speech by Rev William Barber will be one that's remembered for decades to come, as far as I'm concerned. It's long. It's a bit over 10 minutes long. I think it's about 12 minutes, actually. And I thought about doing some edits to get it down to about 5 minutes or so, but that would not have done it any justice at all. In his speech, not only does the Reverend address some points that I've been making about people using religion as a tool for profit, he reiterates that the birthplace of Jesus, he says that Jesus was a brown-skinned Jew from Palestine, not a blonde-haired white man. Not only does he address this, he addresses all of the problems that all progressives have been fighting for, like LGBTQ rights and equality for everybody and fair wages and workplace representation. He jumps on the profiteers, and as far as I know, he is the first one to do this ever at a national convention. Not only that, he points the bone right at the NRA and the crowd goes apeshit. Now, as far as the DNC is concerned, I think Michelle Obama's speech is what may just have saved the Democrats. I think Michelle will be remembered very long after everybody's forgotten about Barack Obama. Perhaps one day she could even be the first black woman president. Perhaps she'll do something even greater than that. And we have the speech by Kizza Khan and his wife, and they both showed unequivocally who Trump really is. Trump's comments later and his responses on Twitter will never be forgotten. What president, apart from Putin or Kim, attacks the mother of a dead American soldier for standing on a stage next to her husband? But as I say, the speech by Reverend William Barber at the DNC in 2016, that will go down as a speech that may have united the party. Okay, now I get for some people, hearing a preacher, especially on this show, might be a bit tough to handle. But remember the rules of skepticism. So please listen to it. There's no prophesizing. And from the outset, the Reverend says that he's not there representing the church, but he's there representing morality. But the reason I love this speech so much, as I said, the Reverend went places that the establishment dared never to go. He walked out on stage and owned the place before he said a word. He's a giant man and a slow-moving man, and his presence was just enough to take the audience. And you'll hear it in a moment, but he talked about gun violence and the relationship breakdown between the police and the people of colour. He talked about minimum wage and LGBTQ rights. He took on the government for not providing general welfare. He took on voting rights and universal health care. He ripped into the 1% and their inability to pay their taxes in their way. And then he got really wound up. Now, like I said, I've not cut any of this out. It's a full nearly 12 minutes, so sit back, have a listen.
Good evening, my brothers and sisters. I come before you tonight as a preacher, the son of a preacher immersed in the movement at 5 years old. I don't come tonight representing any organization, but I come to talk about faith and morality. I'm a preacher, and I'm a theologically conservative, liberal, evangelical biblicist. I know it may sound strange, but I'm a conservative because I work to conserve a divine tradition that teaches us to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. I've had the privilege of traveling the country with the Reverend Dr. James Forbes and Reverend Dr. Tracy Blackman and Sister Simone Campbell as we are working together in the revival and calling for a moral revolution of values. And as we travel the country and we see some things, that's why I'm so concerned about those that say so much about what God says so little, while saying so little about what God says so much. And so, in my heart, I'm troubled, and I'm worried by the way faith is cynically used by some to serve hate, fear, racism, and greed. We need to heed the voice of the scriptures. We need to listen to the ancient chorus in which deep calls unto deep. The prophet Isaiah cries out, "What I'm interested in seeing you doing, says the Lord, as a nation is, pay people what they deserve. Share your food with the hungry. Do this, and then your nation shall be called a repairer of the breach." Jesus, a brown-skinned Palestinian Jew, called us to preach good news to the poor, the broken, and the bruised, and all those who were made to feel unaccepted. Our Constitution calls us to commit our government to establish justice, to promote the general welfare, to provide for the common defense, and to ensure domestic tranquility. Now, to be true, we have never lived this vision perfectly, but this ought to be the goal at the heart of our democracy. And when religion is used to camouflage meanness, we know that we have a heart problem in America. There have always been forces that wanted to harden, even stop the heart of our democracy. But there have also always been people who stood together to stir what Sister Dorothy Day called a revolution of the heart, and what Dr. King called a radical revolution of values. I say to you tonight that some issues are not left versus right or liberal versus conservative. They are right versus wrong. We need to embrace our deepest moral values and push for a revival of the heart of our democracy. When we fight to reinstate the power of the Voting Rights Act, and we break the interposition and nullification of the current Congress, we in the South especially know that when we do that, we are reviving the heart of our democracy. When we fight for 15 and a union, and universal health care, and public education, and immigrant rights, and LGBTQ rights, we are reviving the heart of our democracy. When we develop tax and trade policies that no longer funnel our prosperity to the wealthy few, we are reviving the heart of our democracy. When we hear the legitimate discontent of Black Lives Matter, and we come together to renew justice in our criminal justice system, we are embracing our deepest moral values and reviving the heart of our democracy. System. We are embracing our deepest moral values and reviving the heart of our democracy. And we come together to renew justice in our criminal justice system. We are embracing, when we hear the legitimate discontent of Black Lives Matter, and we come together to renew justice in our criminal justice system, we are embracing our deepest moral values and reviving the heart of our democracy. When we love the Jewish child and the Palestinian child, the Muslim and the Christian and the Hindu and the Buddhist and those who have no faith, but they love this nation. We are reviving the heart of our democracy. When we fight for peace and when we resist the proliferation of military-style weapons on our streets, and when we stand against the anti-democratic stronghold of the NRA, we are reviving the heart of our democracy. In times like these, we have to make some decisions. And I might not normally be here as a preacher and an individual, but when I hear Hillary's voices and positions, I hear and I know that she is working to embrace our deepest moral values, and we should embrace her. But let me be clear. Let me be clear that she nor any person can do it alone. The watchword of this democracy and the watchword of faith is we. The heart of our democracy is on the line this November and beyond. Now, my friends, they tell me that when the heart is in danger, somebody has to call an emergency code. And somebody with a good heart will bring a defibrillator to work on a bad heart. Because it's possible to shock a bad heart and revive the pulse. In this season, when some want to harden and stop the heart of our democracy, we are being called, like our foremothers and fathers, to be the moral defibrillators of our time. We must shock this nation with the power of love. We must shock this nation with the power of mercy. We must shock this nation and fight for justice for all. We can't give up on the heart of our democracy, not now, not ever. And so I stopped by here tonight to ask, is there a heart in this house? Is there a heart in America? Is there somebody that has a heart for the poor and a heart for the vulnerable? Then stand up, vote together, organize together, fight for the heart of this nation. And while you're fighting, sing that old hymn, revive us again, fill each heart with thy love. May each soul be rekindled with fire from above. Hallelujah, thine the glory.
What a brilliant speech. Now, I don't think there's anything that could ever convince me that the Sky Daddy and the miracle baby that likes to fall out of virgins' wombs and then climb poles and eat the chocolate eggs that fall out of rabbits' asses. But if I ever needed any inspiration to get something done, I'm going to be calling on the Reverend Dr. William Barber II. So, as Andrea said at the start of the show, we have a new segment this month called the ThunderCunt of the Month. Now, just so you know, when you don't send me in a whole heap of hate mail, it's called ThunderCunt of the Month because it sounded much better than ThunderCunt of the Fortnight, but we may run it every week or every 3 weeks. You see, the ThunderCunt of the Month award is not something we take lightly here at Smash Talk Studios. And as such, it won't be handed out willy-nilly. Rather, it's only handed out when justified. This month we had two very close contenders, and you know both of these people. One is a loudmouth, hate-filled bigot that spends his time attacking the weak and vulnerable and encouraging his hate-filled little minions to get out there and do the same, even to the extent of actually inciting physical violence. The other person is Donald Trump. So I am, of course, talking about Bill O'Reilly, the man that preaches family values, and one of his favourite lines is, "Where's the father?" Well, Billy here loves family values so much that after a 22-page lawsuit was filed for sexual harassment against him, Billy settled out of court. But he wasn't so lucky, this man that preaches family values and cries out, "Where's the father?" when after a 3-year custody battle that included claims of violence, William here lost custody of his children. And yeah, this is the same God-fearing man that I talked about once before that launched a 4-year tirade of attack on his show targeting Dr. George Tiller for performing legal abortions. Tiller was murdered in his church. And this is the same man that for decades vomited blatant lies about his time in apparent war zones as a correspondent in South America, where he was apparently injured in the fighting, except for not a single person in his so-called crew ever remember this happening, or in some cases him being actually in the countries that he claimed to be at all. But none of this compares to his comments referring or in reference to Michelle Obama's speech last week. I'll play two clips. The first one, Michelle Obama, and I've cut that down because it was quite a long speech, and then I'll play you O'Reilly's response.
It's the story of this country, the story that has brought me to this stage tonight, the story of generations of people who felt the lash of bondage, the shame of servitude, the sting of segregation, but who kept on striving and hoping and doing what needed to be done. So that today, I wake up every morning in a house that was built by slaves. And I watch my daughters, two beautiful, intelligent black young women, playing with their dogs on the White House lawn. And because of Hillary Clinton, my daughters and all our sons and daughters now take for granted that a woman can be president of the United States.
Okay, so like I said earlier in the show, a very powerful speech that may well have gone a long way to keeping Trump away from the Oval Office. And I think between her, the good Reverend, and Mr. Khan, there's a 3-way tie for the Nobel Peace Prize, if I'm correct. But what did Knucklehead have to say about this?
Finally tonight, factor tip of the day. As we mentioned, Talking Points memo, Michelle Obama referenced slaves building the White House and referring to the evolution of America in a positive way. It was a positive comment. The history behind her remark is fascinating. George Washington selected the site in 1791 and has presently laid the cornerstone in 1792. Washington was then running the country out of Philadelphia. Slaves did participate in the construction of the White House. Records show about 400 payments made to slave masters between 795 and 1801. In addition, free blacks, whites, and immigrants also worked on the massive building. There were no illegal immigrants at that time. If you could make it here, you could stay here. Slaves that worked there were well fed and had decent lodgings provided by the government, which stopped hiring slave labor in 1802. However, the feds forbid subcontractors from using slave labor. So Michelle Obama is essentially correct in citing slaves as builders of the White House, but there were others working as well.
Okay, well, you heard it right there. First, he says that Mrs. Obama is talking about the slave trade in a positive way, and then goes on to justify slavery because they were fed and given somewhere to live. And oh, by the way, there was other people working there as well. I wonder if this dickhead knows that slavery still exists today. I doubt it. But on behalf of the estimated 50 million people living in slavery today, including in the United Kingdom and America, I am proud to crown William James Bill O'Reilly Jr. ThunderCunt of the Month. Okay, well, I guess that's about enough for today. I hope you enjoyed listening to this new dual-hosted show of Skeptic Smash Talk. Don't forget to look out for this main show with its new refined format, which is normally uploaded to SoundCloud every Monday evening UK time, which means it will be available on all the other platforms ready for your commute on Tuesday. If you want to keep in touch, you can follow and like the show on all the social networks that allow following and liking, and you can get all the contact information that you need at skepticsmashtalk.com.
If you did in fact enjoy this show, please take a moment to leave a review and the appropriate number of stars on iTunes, where you can also find past and future episodes. But better still, if you really enjoyed the show, feel free to post the links and share this information with all your friends.
So on behalf of myself and Andrea, thanks for listening, and on behalf of myself and the audience, thank you, Andrea, for joining us. So until next time, this has been Skeptic Smash Talk.